Dr. Han Jun sat at his desk, rubbing his tired eyes as the clock on the wall showed 3:17 a.m. The blue light from his computer screen was the only illumination in his home office. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, making final adjustments to an algorithm that might change everything. On the screen, a 3D model of human neural pathways rotated slowly, with certain sections highlighted in bright colors. "Just a little more," he whispered to himself, taking a sip of cold coffee. Han was not an ordinary scientist. At 42 years old, he had already revolutionized the field of neurological engineering. His work focused on mapping human consciousness, the complex patterns of thoughts, memories, and personality that made each person unique. What had started as theoretical research had gradually become something much more personal and urgent. A soft beeping sound from down the hall interrupted his concentration. Han immediately stood up, knocking over his coffee mug in his hurry. He barely noticed the dark liquid spreading across his papers as he rushed to the source of the sound. The bedroom door was partly open, soft light spilling into the hallway. Han pushed it open and stepped inside. The room looked more like a hospital room than a place where a teenager should live. Medical monitors surrounded a bed where a thin girl lay sleeping. This was Mina, Han's 16-year-old daughter. Her black hair was spread across the pillow, her face peaceful despite the tubes and sensors attached to her body. The monitor beside her bed showed irregular brain activity patterns, the reason for the alert that had summoned Han. He checked her vital signs and adjusted her medication through the automated system. Gradually, the patterns on the screen stabilized. "I will fix this, Mina," Han promised, gently touching her hand. "Just a little more time." Mina had been born with a rare condition that caused her nervous system to gradually break down. The disease had progressed slowly throughout her childhood, but in the past year it had accelerated. Now she spent most of her time sleeping, her consciousness fading a little more each day. The best doctors in Seoul had given her less than 1 year to live, but Han refused to accept this verdict. As Mina's condition worsened, he had secretly begun the most ambitious project of his career, creating a complete digital map of his daughter's mind. If he could preserve her consciousness, maybe someday he could find a way to save her. "Sleep well," he whispered, adjusting her blanket before returning to his work. The next morning, Han prepared a simple breakfast of rice porridge for Mina. The morning sunlight streamed through the windows as he carried the tray to her room. He had managed only 2 hours of sleep, but adrenaline kept him going. "Time to wake up, sunshine," he called as he entered her room, but the words died in his throat as he saw the empty bed. The tray crashed to the floor. Han rushed to the bed, heart pounding. The medical equipment was still running, but the sensors lay scattered across the sheets. There was no sign of Mina. "Mina," he shouted, running from room to room in their small apartment. "Mina, where are you?" But there was no answer. The apartment was empty. Han ran back to her bedroom, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The door had been locked from the inside. The windows were sealed shut, necessary to maintain the sterile environment Mina needed. No one could have entered, yet Mina was gone. Han noticed something strange on her sheets, a silvery metallic substance that seemed to shimmer when he moved his head. He touched it cautiously. It felt cool and slightly slippery, unlike anything he had ever encountered before. Han grabbed a sample container from his lab equipment and carefully scraped some of the substance into it. With shaking hands, he called the police. The next hours passed in a blur. Police officers filled the apartment, asking questions Han couldn't answer. How could his bedridden daughter disappear from a locked apartment on the 14th floor? The officers looked at each other with expressions that mixed confusion and suspicion. "Dr. Han," the lead detective, Officer Park, said carefully, "is it possible your daughter left on her own? Perhaps she was not as ill as you believed." Han stared at the man in disbelief. "She cannot walk. She cannot even stay awake for more than a few hours, and the apartment was locked from the inside." The officers searched every inch of the building but found nothing. No one had seen anyone enter or leave Han's apartment. The security cameras in the hallway showed no movement during the night. When the police finally left, promising to continue their investigation, Han sat alone on Mina's bed. The silvery substance had now completely disappeared from the sheets. Even the sample he had collected seemed to have vanished from its container, leaving no trace. Han moved to his computer and pulled up the data from Mina's health monitoring system. The readings had been normal until 4:23 a.m. Then there was a sudden spike in electromagnetic activity, a reading so unusual that the system had flagged it as a malfunction. 3 minutes later, all biological signals from Mina had simply stopped. Something impossible had happened in this room. Han's scientific mind raced through possible explanations, each more unlikely than the last. But one thing was certain: this was not a normal disappearance. The silvery substance, the electromagnetic spike, the sealed room, all pointed to something beyond current scientific understanding. In the days that followed, Han barely slept or ate. He converted his living room into an investigation center, pinning up timelines and data readings on the walls. The police investigation stalled quickly with no leads to follow. They began to imply that Han himself might be involved in his daughter's disappearance, though they had no evidence. 2 weeks after Mina vanished, Han made a discovery that changed everything. Analyzing the electromagnetic readings again, he identified a pattern that had been hidden in the data. It wasn't random. It had structure, almost like a language. And when he ran it through his specialized equipment, he detected something that made his blood run cold. Within the pattern were fragments that matched Mina's brain waves. Tiny pieces of her consciousness had somehow been encoded in the electromagnetic burst. Han sat back in his chair, a terrible understanding dawning. His daughter hadn't been kidnapped by any human agency. The silvery substance, the impossible sealed room disappearance, the electromagnetic patterns, they all pointed to one conclusion: something not from this earth had taken Mina. And somehow, it had taken not just her body, but parts of her consciousness as well. Han looked at the incomplete consciousness map of Mina on his computer, the project he had been working on to save her. Now it might be the only key to finding out what happened to his daughter. "I will find you," he promised to the empty room. "Whatever took you, wherever you are, I will find a way to bring you back." Outside his window, stars began to appear in the darkening sky. Han looked up at them with new eyes, wondering which one might hold the answer to his daughter's disappearance. 6 months passed since Mina disappeared. The police had long since closed their investigation, filing it under unexplained cases. Han's colleagues at the research institute had given up trying to bring him back to work. They sent occasional messages expressing concern about his mental health, but Han ignored them all. His apartment no longer resembled a home. The living room walls were covered with papers, charts, and graphs. Computer screens displayed constant readings from various sensors he had built. The furniture had been pushed aside to make room for strange machines that hummed day and night. The kitchen was filled with instant noodle containers and empty coffee cups. Han had lost weight. His once neat hair had grown long, and a patchy beard covered his face. Dark circles surrounded his eyes from lack of sleep. But despite his disheveled appearance, his mind remained sharp, entirely focused on one goal: finding whatever had taken his daughter. Every night, Han drove around the city in his old car, which he had filled with detection equipment. He followed faint traces of the same electromagnetic signature he had found in Mina's room. The signal was weak, appearing and disappearing like a shy animal, but Han was patient. He knew it would eventually lead him to what he sought. On this night, a heavy storm covered Seoul. Rain pounded the car roof as Han drove slowly through an industrial area at the edge of the city. Lightning flashed across the sky. As one particularly bright bolt struck nearby, Han's equipment suddenly came alive, beeping and flashing with activity. "There you are," Han whispered, his heart racing. The signal was stronger than he had ever seen it before. Something about the storm must have amplified it. He followed the reading to an abandoned factory complex, a relic from the economic boom of decades past. The building stood dark and empty, surrounded by a rusting fence with no trespassing signs hanging askew. Han parked his car and gathered his portable equipment. Rain soaked him immediately as he stepped outside, but he barely noticed. Cutting through the fence with tools he had brought, Han made his way into the main building. The roof had partly collapsed, allowing rain to pour in. His flashlight beam cut through the darkness, revealing old machinery covered in dust and rust. The concrete floor was cracked, with small plants growing through the openings. Han's detector led him to a metal door in the floor, an entrance to a basement or storage area. It was locked, but the years had weakened both the door and its frame. Han used a crowbar to force it open, revealing a steep staircase leading down into darkness. The air below felt strangely warm compared to the chill above. Han descended carefully, one hand holding his flashlight, the other gripping the detector that now beeped frantically. The stairs ended in a long corridor that looked much newer than the abandoned factory above. The walls were made of smooth concrete, the floor clean and dry. At the end of the corridor was another door, this one made of thick metal with no visible handle or lock. Han approached it cautiously. Before he could figure out how to open it, the door slid open on its own with a soft hiss. Han stepped back in surprise, raising his flashlight. The beam revealed a large circular room. The walls were lined with strange equipment that looked unlike anything Han had seen before. In the center of the room was a raised platform, and on it, Han gasped. There, hovering a few inches above the platform, was a shifting mass of silver-blue particles. It moved constantly, flowing like water yet maintaining a vaguely human shape. It was about the size of a person, glowing with a soft internal light. This was the source of the signal, the thing he had been searching for. As Han's flashlight beam touched the entity, it reacted. The flowing particles moved faster, and the shape changed, becoming more distinctly humanoid. Han stood frozen, torn between fear and fascination. Then the entity did something unexpected. It raised what looked like an arm and mimicked Han's posture. When Han took a step forward, the entity copied the movement. When he raised his other hand, the entity did the same. "What are you?" Han whispered. The entity made no sound, but its surface rippled in response to his voice. Han set down his equipment and slowly approached the platform. The detector continued to beep, but he ignored it now. As he got closer, he noticed something strange about the patterns in the flowing particles. They reminded him of something he had seen before, the neural pathway maps he had created in his research. Han rushed back to his bag and pulled out a small device he had built specifically to detect human neural patterns. He pointed it at the entity and activated it. The screen immediately displayed a result that made his knees weak. Within the electromagnetic field of the entity were fragments of human neural patterns. Han compared them to the backup data he carried of Mina's consciousness map. The match was partial but unmistakable. This entity contained pieces of Mina's mind. "Mina," Han said, his voice breaking, "is part of you in there?" The entity's form shifted again, and for a moment, Han thought he saw the outline of a young girl's face in the swirling particles. It was gone in an instant, but it was enough to confirm his suspicion. This thing hadn't just taken Mina, it had somehow absorbed her consciousness, incorporated her neural patterns into its own alien structure. Han sat heavily on the floor, trying to process this discovery. Was Mina still alive in some form? Could she be separated from this entity? Was she aware? As these questions raced through his mind, Han noticed something else. The entity was moving around the platform in a pattern. It would move to one side, pause, then move to another, pause again, and repeat. After watching for a few minutes, Han realized it wasn't random. The entity was tracing the same pattern over and over. Han quickly drew the pattern on a notepad. It was a simple diagram, circles connected by lines. He had seen similar diagrams before in astronomical charts. It looked like a solar system, but not ours. The entity was showing him where it came from. But why? Was it trying to communicate? Did it want to return home? Or was it showing Han where more of these entities might be found? The last possibility made Han's blood run cold. He pulled out another device from his bag, one that could scan for similar electromagnetic signatures over a wider area. The results showed weak but definite readings at multiple locations across the city. This entity wasn't alone. There were others like it. hidden throughout Seoul. How many people had they taken? How many consciousnesses had they absorbed? As the storm continued to rage outside, Han made a decision. He would study this entity, learn to communicate with it, if possible, and find a way to extract whatever remained of Mina from its alien structure. He would call it Bo, a simple name that might help him think of it as an individual rather than just a thing. Han looked at the silver-blue entity that contained fragments of his daughter's mind. Bo, he said firmly, I'm going to take you home. And then you're going to help me find a way to save Mina. The entity, Bo, pulsed with light as if in agreement. Outside, the thunder rolled across the sky as the storm began to pass. A new phase of Han's search had begun. Han converted the basement of his apartment building into a secret laboratory. The landlord had been happy to rent the unused space to him, not asking questions when Han installed heavy security doors and brought in strange equipment. Han paid 6 months of rent in advance using nearly all his savings. The center of the lab was a large glass chamber where Bo floated. Han had designed special electromagnetic fields to contain the entity safely, cables and sensors connected to computers that recorded every movement and energy fluctuation. Han spent every waking hour there, sleeping on a cot in the corner when exhaustion overtook him. During the first weeks, Han focused on establishing communication with Bo. He created a simple interface, a screen where patterns could be displayed, and a sensor that could read the entity's electromagnetic responses. The process was slow and frustrating. Bo seemed intelligent but thought in ways completely different from humans. Han started with basic concepts: yes, no, stay, move. He would display a pattern and then perform the action, hoping Bo would connect the two. Progress came in small breakthroughs. On the 10th day, Bo correctly responded to yes and no signals. By the end of the first month, they had built a vocabulary of about 50 concepts. One morning, Han entered the lab carrying a tablet, with Mina's neural map displayed on it. He held it up to Bo's chamber. This is Mina, Han said, pointing to the display. My daughter. You have parts of her inside you. Do you understand? Bo pulsed with blue light, the pattern indicating yes. Did you mean to take her? Han asked. The entity shifted to a different pattern, one they had established for confusion. Han tried a different approach. Why did you take Mina? Bo's form changed rapidly, displaying a series of patterns that Han's computer translated as best it could. Collect, learn, preserve, value. You collect consciousness? Han asked. Yes, Bo responded. For what purpose? Growth, knowledge, respect. Han sat down heavily, understanding beginning to dawn. You don't realize you're harming us when you take people, do you? You think you're preserving something valuable. Bo pulsed with the pattern for yes. This was a breakthrough. Bo's species weren't malevolent invaders, they were collectors, like humans who collected butterflies without understanding they were killing living creatures. They valued consciousness but didn't comprehend that removing it destroyed the physical being. Over the next month, Han worked to explain human concepts of life and death to Bo. The entity learned quickly, and as it understood more, it began to show something Han hadn't expected: remorse. Bo's patterns changed, becoming more subdued. It began to share information voluntarily, helping Han understand its nature and capabilities. Han learned that Bo's species were ancient consciousness, collectors that traveled between stars. They had visited many worlds, collecting minds they found interesting or unique. They didn't have solid physical forms but could manipulate energy and matter at a quantum level. They lived for thousands of years, carrying the collected consciousness, patterns with them. Most importantly, Han confirmed his greatest hope: Mina's consciousness wasn't completely gone. Her neural patterns existed within Bo, fragmented but potentially recoverable. If Han could build a system capable of hosting a complete human consciousness, he might extract and download what remained of Mina. In his old research lab, before Mina disappeared, Han had been developing technology to map and preserve human consciousness. Now he had a new goal: to complete that work and use it to save his daughter. Han called it the Soul Extractor. The name made him uncomfortable, too close to the realm of religion rather than science. But it was accurate. He would need to extract Mina's soul, her consciousness, memories, and personality, from Bo's alien structure. The technical challenges were enormous. Han would need to build a quantum neural interface that could separate Mina's consciousness patterns from Bo's alien framework without destroying either. He would need computing power beyond what was commercially available, and he would need to create a suitable vessel for Mina's consciousness once extracted. Han began gathering components, some purchased legally, others acquired through less reputable channels. He worked day and night, pushing himself to the limits of exhaustion. At times he would look up from his workbench to find that 12 or 14 hours had passed without his awareness. As Han worked, Bo watched. The entity seemed to understand what Han was trying to accomplish. It began to help, manipulating components too small for human hands and suggesting modifications to Han's designs through their communication system. "Why are you helping me?" Han asked one night, after Bo had shown him how to stabilize a particularly difficult quantum circuit. "To fix mistake," Bo responded. "To return what was taken." Han nodded, understanding. Bo had learned something new from absorbing Mina's consciousness: remorse, the desire to make amends. It was an emotion the entity had never experienced before encountering humans. 4 months into the project, Han hit a major obstacle. The neural interface he had designed wasn't sensitive enough to distinguish between the billions of connections in a human mind. He needed more precise technology that didn't yet exist. Han slumped at his desk, fighting despair. He was so close, yet still so far from saving Mina. Bo pulsed with light, drawing Han's attention. The entity displayed a new pattern on the communication screen, a design for a quantum scanning device far more advanced than anything Han had considered. Bo had been learning from watching Han work, combining that knowledge with its own alien understanding of consciousness and energy. "You can help me build this?" Han asked, examining the complex design. "Yes," Bo responded. "With this, we could extract Mina's consciousness intact." "Partial," Bo answered honestly. "Damaged, but alive." Han nodded slowly. He had always known that Mina wouldn't come back exactly as she was. Too much had been lost in the initial absorption. But even a partially restored Mina would be better than no Mina at all. "Then let's begin," Han said. They worked together, the human scientist and the alien consciousness collector, creating technology that neither could have built alone. Bo's knowledge of quantum processes combined with Han's understanding of human neural structures produced breakthroughs that would have revolutionized science if they had been shared with the world. But Han had no interest in scientific fame. His sole focus was recovering his daughter. By the end of the 6th month, the soul extractor was nearly complete. The main chamber was a sphere of specialized crystal that could contain and stabilize quantum states. Around it, rings of superconducting material controlled the flow of energy. The whole system was connected to computers running software Han had written specifically for the extraction process. The final component was the vessel, the place where Mina's consciousness would reside. After extraction, Han had originally planned to build an artificial neural network, a complex computer that could simulate a human brain. But as the project progressed, a different possibility emerged. Bo's physical form was highly adaptable, capable of reconfiguring itself at the quantum level. With proper programming, it could potentially serve as a vessel for Mina's consciousness. The entity would essentially become a new body for his daughter. When Han proposed this idea, Bo immediately agreed. The entity seemed eager to transform itself, to change from consciousness thief to consciousness host. As Han made the final adjustments to the soul extractor, he thought about what would happen if he succeeded. Would Mina truly return? Or would something new emerge? Neither fully his daughter nor fully alien. There was only one way to find out. "We'll begin tomorrow," Han told Bo. checking the system one final time. Are you ready? Bo pulsed with light in the pattern for yes. Han nodded, feeling a strange mix of hope and fear. After months of work, he would finally attempt to download his daughter's soul into the thing that took her. What happened next would either be a miracle or a disaster. There was no middle ground. The morning of the procedure arrived with a strange calmness. Han had slept only 2 hours, but his mind felt unusually clear. He moved around the lab, checking systems and calibrating instruments with steady hands. Everything needed to be perfect. Bo floated in its chamber, its silvery form shifting slowly as if also preparing for what was to come. The entity had been in a resting state for the past 12 hours, conserving energy for the transfer. Han checked the soul extractor one final time. The crystal sphere at its center hummed softly with power. The computers displayed all green status indicators. There was nothing left to do but begin. I'm going to start the procedure now, Han said to Bo. Are you ready? Bo pulsed with blue light, the signal for yes. Han took a deep breath and pressed his palm against the scanner that would activate the system. The computer recognized his handprint and began the startup sequence. Lights flashed across control panels as the soul extractor came fully online. Transfer sequence initiating, announced the computer's voice. Beginning preliminary scan. A beam of pale light emerged from the top of the crystal sphere, sweeping over Bo's chamber. The entity remained still, allowing the scan to map its quantum structure. On the main screen, a three-dimensional model of Bo appeared, showing the complex patterns of energy that made up its being. Scan complete, said the computer, analyzing consciousness patterns. The model on the screen changed, highlighting certain areas within Bo's structure. These were the fragments of Mina's consciousness, scattered throughout the entity like stars in a galaxy. Target consciousness identified, the computer confirmed. Estimating integrity at 73%. Han nodded. 73% was better than he had hoped for. It meant that most of Mina's core memories and personality might be intact. Begin extraction phase, Han commanded. The crystal sphere began to spin slowly, generating a specialized quantum field. This field would resonate with Mina's neural patterns, separating them from Bo's alien consciousness. Warning, said the computer suddenly. Subject entering unstable state. Han looked up to see Bo's form shifting rapidly, changing from silver blue to a darker, almost purple color. The entity was experiencing stress from the extraction field. Pause sequence, Han ordered quickly. The sphere slowed its spinning, and Bo's color gradually returned to normal. Han frowned, thinking quickly. The original plan had been to extract Mina's consciousness into a temporary storage unit, then prepare Bo's form as a vessel. But the extraction process was putting too much strain on the entity. They needed a different approach. Han remembered something from his research, how certain quantum states could exist in superposition, occupying multiple conditions simultaneously. What if, instead of separating the consciousnesses entirely, he could create a state where both existed in the same space but remained distinct? Bo, Han said urgently, can you maintain your structure if we try a parallel integration instead of full extraction? Bo pulsed with light, indicating yes. Computer, modify extraction protocol, Han commanded. Switch to parallel consciousness integration mode 7. Warning, replied the computer. Mode 7 is theoretical only. No practical tests have been conducted. Override warning, Han said firmly. Proceed with mode 7. The computer beeped in acknowledgement and began reconfiguring the soul extractor. The crystal sphere changed its rotation pattern, now spinning in 2 directions simultaneously, an impossible motion that could only occur in quantum states. New extraction protocol. Ready, announced the computer. Proceed. Han looked at Bo, who pulsed with an affirmative signal. Proceed, Han ordered. The modified extraction field enveloped Bo's chamber. This time, instead of trying to pull Mina's consciousness out, it would reorganize both consciousnesses within Bo's structure, creating distinct regions that could function independently while sharing the same physical form. Bo's color began changing again, shifting through blues, purples, and even flashes of gold. The entity's shape also transformed, stretching and compressing as the internal reorganization took place. Han watched anxiously, but the computer showed no warning signs this time. "Integration at 20%, reported the computer. Han moved to another console and began preparing the final phase of the procedure. Once the integration reached 100%, he would need to stabilize the dual consciousness and help it adapt to its new configuration. Integration at 45%. Suddenly, all the lights in the lab flickered. The main power supply was struggling, with the enormous energy demands of the soul extractor. Han had anticipated this possibility and quickly activated the backup generators. Power stabilized and the procedure continued, integration at 67%. Bo's form was now pulsing rapidly, and Han could see something remarkable happening. The entity was gradually taking on a more human-like shape, still made of the same silvery substance, but now with the clear outline of a head, torso, and limbs. Integration at 82%. The lab's equipment began to vibrate as energy levels increased. Han checked the readings and saw that the quantum field was generating unexpected harmonics. This wasn't necessarily dangerous, but it wasn't part of the plan either. Integration at 95%. Bo's form suddenly flared with brilliant light so bright that Han had to shield his eyes. When he looked again, he saw that the entity had fully transformed into a human silhouette made of shimmering silver-blue energy. The shape was unmistakably female, with proportions similar to Mina's. "Integration complete," announced the computer. "Dual consciousness structure achieved. Stability at 94%. Han approached the chamber cautiously. The figure inside remained motionless, floating a few inches above the floor. "Begin stabilization sequence," Han ordered. The crystal sphere slowed its spinning and eventually stopped. The quantum field remained active but at a lower intensity, now working to maintain the new dual structure rather than change it. "Mina?" Han called softly. "Can you hear me?" The figure did not respond. Han checked the readings and saw that both consciousnesses were present but dormant, like two people in deep sleep. They would need time to adjust to their new shared existence. "Computer, how long until consciousness activation?" "Estimated time to natural activation, 72 hours, replied the computer. "Forced activation not recommended." Han nodded. He had waited 6 months to find Bo and another 6 to build the soul extractor. He could wait 3 more days. Han released Bo, now Bo and Mina together, from the chamber and transferred the figure to a specialized containment field in another part of the lab. This field would provide the energy the entity needed while protecting it during the sensitive adjustment period. The silvery figure floated peacefully in the new field, occasionally rippling with gentle waves of light. Han set up a chair beside it and sat down, prepared to wait however long necessary. "I'll be right here when you wake up," he promised. For the next 3 days, Han rarely left that chair. He ate little and slept in short naps, always keeping the figure in sight. He spoke to it often, telling stories from Mina's childhood, explaining what had happened since she disappeared, and describing the world she would return to. On the 3rd day, as Han was dozing in his chair, a soft sound woke him. He opened his eyes to see the silvery figure stirring. Its form was changing, becoming even more human-like. Features were appearing on the face, eyes, nose, mouth, still made of the same silvery substance but clearly defined. Han stood up, his heart racing, with hope and fear. After all this time, all his work, the moment had finally arrived. Either Mina would return to him in some form, or all would be lost. The figure's eyes opened, glowing silver orbs that somehow held expression. They focused on Han, and the figure raised a hand toward him. "Dad?" The voice was not spoken aloud but formed from vibrations in the air itself. "Is that you, Mina?" Han's voice trembled as he took a step closer to the silvery figure. "Is it really you?" The figure looked down at its hands, turning them over with curious movements. The silvery substance flowed like liquid, but maintained its human shape. "I think so." The voice came again, vibrations in the air rather than sounds from a mouth. But I feel, different. There are memories that aren't mine. I remember stars and traveling between them. I remember being something else. Han nodded, his eyes filling with tears. You're sharing a form with Bo, the entity that took you. I couldn't fully separate your consciousness from its structure, so you exist together now. The silver face showed confusion, the features shifting slightly. Bo? Is that what you call it? Yes. It helped me bring you back. Han explained everything. How Mina had disappeared, how he had searched for months, found Bo, and worked to extract her consciousness. As he spoke, the silver figure listened intently. Sometimes the head would tilt in a way that reminded Han of Mina's habits. Other times it would become very still in a manner that seemed more alien. So, I'm not fully human anymore, the figure said, when Han finished his explanation. No, Han admitted, but you're still my daughter, at least part of you is. The figure was quiet for a long moment. Then it took a tentative step forward. The movement was awkward at first, but quickly became more fluid as it adjusted to the new form. I remember the hospital room, the figure said. I remember being sick for a long time and then light and a strange pulling sensation. I was afraid, but then I wasn't anymore. I was everywhere and nowhere at once. The figure reached out and touched Han's hand. The contact felt strange, cool and slightly tingly, like touching very weak electricity. Dad, I missed you, the figure said in Mina's voice. Even when I wasn't really me anymore, some part of me missed you. Han's control broke then. He wrapped his arms around the silver figure, not caring about the strange sensation. He was hugging his daughter, changed, different, but still Mina in the ways that mattered most. After a moment, the figure gently pulled back. Its posture changed, becoming more rigid and less human-like. The face smoothed out, losing Mina's expressions. Han. The voice was different now, deeper with an unusual cadence. This is the one you call Bo. Han took a step back, wiping tears from his face. Bo, thank you for helping bring her back. The silver head nodded. We exist together now. Sometimes she will be dominant, sometimes I will be. We are learning to share this form. Are you comfortable with this arrangement? Han asked. It is new, Bo replied, but not unpleasant. Your daughter's mind is interesting. I have never experienced human emotions before. They are powerful. The figure's posture shifted again, becoming more relaxed, more human. Mina was back. Dad, Bo wants to tell you something important, she said. It has been waiting to tell you since you found it. Han looked at the silver face, seeing it smooth out once more as Bo took control. We did not understand, Bo said, the vibrations forming words with a different rhythm than when Mina spoke. To my kind, collecting consciousness is preservation, not destruction. We believed we were saving what was most precious. The entity moved closer to Han, its form rippling with what seemed like emotion. Through Mina's memories, I have learned what it means to lose someone. I have experienced grief, love, and longing. We were wrong in what we did. Han had dreamed of this moment, forcing the entity that took his daughter to face him and acknowledge the pain it had caused. But now that it was happening, he felt no satisfaction, only a complex mixture of emotions he couldn't fully name. You've given her back to me in a way, Han said finally. That counts for something. Not just me, Bo said. There are others, like me, who came to Earth. They have taken others as I took Mina. Han's heart raced. How many? 23 of my kind arrived on this world. Each has collected at least one consciousness. Could they be recovered too? Like I recovered Mina? Possibly, Bo said. But they would need to understand as I now understand. They would need to choose to help. The silver face shifted, and Mina returned. Dad, we can help the others. Bo knows where they are. We can teach them what Bo has learned. Han considered this. 23 other entities, each having taken at least one person. That meant at least 23 families suffering as he had suffered, searching for answers they would never find through normal means. It won't be easy, Han said. I would need to build more equipment, find a way to approach the other entities safely. We can help you, Mina said. Bo knows how they think, and I know how humans think. Together, we can bridge the gap between the two species. Han looked at the silver figure before him. Not fully his daughter anymore, but not entirely alien either. He had downloaded his daughter's soul into the thing that took her, just to hear it apologize. But in doing so, he had created something new, something that might help others recover what they had lost. We'll need a better lab, Han said, beginning to think practically. And I'll need to create identification for you. We can't exactly tell people you're my daughter who was taken by an alien and now shares a body with it. Mina laughed, and the sound, though still formed from vibrations in the air, was so much like her old laugh that Han's heart ached with joy. We could say I'm a research assistant, she suggested. Someone helping with your experiments. Han nodded. That might work, and we'll need to find a way for you to appear more human in public. He gestured to her silvery form. Bo took control briefly. I can modify this form to appear solid and less reflective. It would still not be fully human, but closer in appearance. Good, Han said. We'll work on that first, then begin planning how to approach the other entities. Over the next few days, Mina and Bo practiced changing their shared form to appear more human. The silver color became less bright, taking on a pale, pearlescent quality that could pass for unusual but human skin in dim light. They created simple clothing from the same substance as their body, making the overall appearance more normal. Han watched with amazement as they learned to control their new form. Sometimes he would see purely Mina in the way they moved or spoke. Other times, Bo's alien nature was clearly dominant. Most often, they were something in between, a new being with aspects of both. One evening, as Han worked on plans for approaching the first of the other entities, Mina Bo sat beside him, looking at the stars through the lab window. Are you happy? Han asked suddenly. Like this, I mean. The pearlescent face turned to him, Mina's expressions clearly showing. I get to be alive again, Dad. I'm not sick anymore. I can move and think and feel. And I have all these new experiences, these memories of things no human has ever seen. She smiled. It's not what I expected my life to be, but yes, I'm happy. Bo took partial control, the face becoming a blend of human and alien. And I have learned what it means to care for another being, to feel regret, and to work to make amends. These are new experiences for my kind. Han nodded, feeling a weight lift from his heart. He had not gotten his daughter back exactly as she was, but he had not lost her entirely either. And in the process, he had helped an alien species understand humanity a little better. As dawn broke over the city, Han, Mina, and Bo began planning their next steps. There were more entities to find, more consciousnesses to save, and a new relationship between two very different species to build. The journey ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in over a year, Han faced the future with hope rather than despair. His impossible quest had led to an even more impossible outcome, one that might help others find what he had found. Not a perfect restoration of what was lost, but something new and precious nonetheless.